It's time for Chicago's annual funny music convention, FumpFest. This year, we're celebrating Dr. Demento's 50th anniversary with special guest, radio legend Dr. Demento, appearing live and in person. Dr. Demento will be presenting his Festival of Dementia, signing autographs, and hosting the 11th annual Logan Whitehurst Memorial Awards for Excellence in Comedy Music. FumpFest is taking place August 20th through 22nd at the Westin North Shore in Wheeling, Illinois, and will feature performances by Bill Larkin, Carla Ulbrich, Steve Goody, Bad Beth and Beyond, The Gothsicles, Ross Child, The Great Luke Ski, Worm Quartet, Insane Ian, Nuclear Bubble Wrap, Carrie Dalby, Ian Lockwood, and a special appearance by Sulu from The Dr. Demento Show. Plus Demented Karaoke, dumb parody ideas, the Fump Showcase, and more. Visit FumpFest.com to register and book your hotel room. That's FumpFest.com.
I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Canon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hey Kiki, you dead?
Yeah, man. Me dead.
Well, become undead because we need to do a podcast.
Zombie podcast!
So before we get into our main feature, we do need to talk about something. Kiki, do you wanna start the story?
Yeah, this is from the Los Angeles Times. Judge grants class action status in workers' lawsuit against Disneyland. I believe we may have mentioned this kind of in passing on a previous episode. I can't remember if we did or not. This lawsuit actually started back in 2019 with 5 workers. Their original complaint was that the Walt Disney Corporation violated something called Measure L. It requires Anaheim resort businesses that receive tax subsidies and all of their subcontractors to pay employees a living wage. At the time of the initial lawsuit, a living wage was defined as $15 an hour. Currently, it is $17 an hour. A labor union called Unite Here Local 11 and several other unions that represent Disneyland employees have backed Measure L, and it has taken a year and a half for the judge to allow the case to proceed as a class action lawsuit. A lot of the workers are directly employed by the Walt Disney Company. Many other workers are contract workers for various contract. The 2 largest are companies called Sodexo and Sodexo Magic. They are in charge of restaurants and coffee shops throughout Disneyland. They have not yet disclosed how many people have signed up for the class action. They're saying it is now in the thousands, however. So, thoughts?
Pay your workers a living wage, period.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
People want to get paid what they're worth, and they want to get paid a living wage. These are still people that wake up every day, go up to Disneyland, and deal with the guests. And now there's more guests coming into the parks now, especially now in summer. People are going on their summer vacations to Disneyland. These people who have to put up with all of these park goers and that are going to treat them like garbage, pay them enough that it makes it worth their while, or they'll go somewhere else. Pay your workers, pay them what they're worth, and they will work for you. That's my personal thing about it. Go Disney workers, get your money.
And if you've ever met a Disney cast member, these people truly are passionate about their jobs in a way that nobody is passionate about a job. I'm sorry, I've never been passionate about a job. I do a job because I need money to survive. But
for a lot of them, it's their dream to work for Disney. Like us, they grew up watching the Disney movies and stuff, so they want to be part of it. And in their little way, working behind a register at Disneyland, or as a custodian, or as a character, that's part of their dream. I mean, we've kind of talked about it ourselves. You know, how many little girls want to grow up and be a Disney princess, and a lot of them are the Disney princesses at Disneyland.
Yeah,
so this is their dream.
I've known quite a few cast members in my life that work both at Disneyland, and I've known several that have worked at Disney World. I've known people that have worked food service, retail, and even character jobs. Every single person I've known that has worked as a cast member at Disney, I've even known people that have worked Disney cruises. Every single one of them had true passion for the job while they worked at Disney. Pay your workers a living wage, Disney, and more than a living wage, a thriving wage. If you work at a Disney park, you deserve a thriving wage. Every human deserves a living wage. Are you a human? You deserve a living wage. If you're working at a Disney park, you deserve a thriving wage.
Disney can afford it.
Yeah. That's the position of this podcast. Thriving wage for Disney workers.
Yep. All right, let's move on from that. So as we are recording this episode, it is Olympic season. The 2021 Summer Olympics, delayed from last year, is already underway.
Do you, in general, did you grow up in an Olympic household?
I did not.
Really? That fascinates me. I grew up in an Olympic household. We are not sports people. You know this about me. We have talked about this on the show before. I do not watch sports. We are an Olympic household.
Your state hosted the Olympics once.
Yeah, I went to the Olympics when they were in Atlanta. I got up in the middle of the night to watch the Olympic torch run by my house, and I mean, it literally ran in front of my house. 20 feet from my house. It was the coolest thing in my life. We weren't rich enough to actually go into any venues, and see any sports. But it was, free to go to Atlanta and walk around. My grandparents lived close enough outside of Atlanta that Atlanta was a day drive, so we kind of stayed in their house and drove into Atlanta for the day. Walked around in the crowds and bought some merchandise, and there were lots of Olympians posing with their medals and having meet and greets and things like that. So it was really cool. But I have watched every single Olympics since I was conscious, summer and winter. I cannot stand sports. I cannot get enough of the Olympics.
So yeah, since it is Summer Olympics, let's talk about the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, because this is the only Olympics movie we know of on Disney Plus, really.
There is another one, Miracle, about the hockey team, but we can save that for February.
Yeah, that's true. This one I think is better. I've seen both, but
this is the more well-known movie, I would say. Yeah.
And this is the movie that's nostalgic for us.
Yeah.
This is the movie that came out in our childhood. We talked about this movie a lot in our childhood, I think. At least I did. Mm-hmm. My friend, I don't know if this was like a cultural touchstone for you, but it was for me.
It was just one of those movies that was on TV a lot for me growing up in 90, 93, 94?
93, I think it was. Yeah.
October 1993.
Yeah, but like my friends at school and stuff, like occasionally you'd just be sitting around and there'd be dead silence, and then like one of my friends would just got out and be like, you can't believe Jamaica, we got a bobsled team. Like, it's just out of nowhere.
So yeah, this was about the 1988 Winter Olympics, which was held in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
I remember those. I was very young, but I do remember them. Yeah.
The story of the first Jamaican bobsled team. This movie takes some liberties with the actual story.
That is putting it very mildly. Let's just go through the things the movie has in common with reality.
Okay.
That'll be easiest.
Okay.
The things that the movie and reality have in common. Jamaica had a pushcart tradition. Some guys had an idea of, hey, pushcarts and bobsleds kind of look like each other, and you do need, we have a sprinting tradition, and you do need a kind of sprint start to push the bobsled off at the beginning. These two things might go together. It would be kind of neat to see Jamaica in Winter Olympics. It'd be kind of fun to get our foot in the door there. Let's try it. They got their foot in the door. They got the bobsled team in, composed mostly of sprinters. They ended up crashing. It was, unlike what's shown in the movie, it was a pilot error that just came from them being new.
Inexperience, yeah.
Yeah, it's inexperience due to it being new. There were some injuries resulting from the crash, but they were able to walk away from the crash. They did not carry the sled over their head, but they walked their sled to the finish line. That ended their first Olympics, and that became the first Jamaican bobsled team. It is kind of an inspiring story of the first people to do a thing.
And they've pretty much had a bobsled team in almost every Winter Olympics since.
However, the rest of what you see in the film is fiction, as far as this movie goes.
Yeah, this is a movie that's at the time, the script had been floating around for about 4 years at Disney, and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do with it. 3 of the stars were already attached to it at the time. Leon Robinson, Dougie Doug, Malik Yoba were already tied to the film. And it went through a lot of changes. Originally, it was going to be a straight, serious sports film. But apparently that wasn't really working for Disney. So they decided to add a lot of comedy to it. Probably that's when this is likely when they decided to bring in John Candy. And Dougie Doug was already known as a stand-up comic at the time. So originally the title was going to be called Blue Maga. Maaga. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And it went through several directors before finally getting on its actual director, John Turteltaub. Turteltaub. That's how So it went through a couple of different directors.
I love the list of directors that were not.
Jeremiah Chelik, who dropped out of the movie to direct Benny and June. And then they hired Brian Gibson, who also dropped out of the movie to direct What's Love Got to Do with It.
Yeah, I think that is such an interesting progression, because I mean, Benny and June is such a cultural moment.
Mm-hmm. And What's Love Got to Do with It?
And What's Love Got to Do with It? Also a cultural moment. And like I said, kind of for our generation, Cool Runnings is a bit of a, but it's no Benny and June or What's Love Got to Do with It. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
You know, Turteltaub is kind of interesting in his Disney credits. His biggest thing for Disney is National Treasure.
Mm.
You know, So that's kind of what we're talking about here. Is he goes from this to the National Treasure? I mean, he's got stops in between, of course, but even right around this same time, he releases While You Were Sleeping. I think he also did that one.
And Three Ninjas.
Oh, yeah, and Three Ninjas. He did Three Ninjas right before this.
Yep.
Yeah, so kind of an interesting, yeah. So yeah, you mentioned that the actors that they got for this, John Candy we've talked about before, Stone Cold Legend, Leon Robinson. Sometimes he's just called Leon. He had come off of the Five Heartbeats, and after that he would go into the TV movie The Temptations. In 2000, he plays Little Richard. So he does a lot of,
biopics.
Biopics, but also musical biopics. And then in the comedy here, he's the straight man to Dougie Doug. And
Dougie Doug was everywhere in the 90s, really.
He really, really was. He had done Jungle Fever before this, Spike Lee. And he had done Hanging with the Homeboys before this. And he did Class Act with Kid and Play before this. And after this, he still sticks with Disney. He does Operation Dumbo Drop. He does the remake of That Darn Cat. He switches over in the early 2000s. He does Eight-Legged Freaks. He did the show that Bill Cosby did after The Cosby Show, just called Cosby, that he did with Felicia Rashad. He started out in the Apollo as stand-up.
Yeah, I remember seeing at least one stand-up special of his, I believe on the early days of Comedy Central.
Yeah, and then, like I said, he gets hooked up with Spike Lee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he already had quite a lot of cred before he gets to Cool Running. The one thing I've always kind of wanted to know is, did Sanka pay heavily for that product placement?
Sanka Coffee. His name is Sanka Coffee. Yeah.
And it's spelled in the movie Coffie. And his mom owns the cafe and it's called like Mama Coffees or something. And you're like, okay, well, maybe their last name really is Coffee. And his first name is Sanka as like a joke. So yeah, we start out in November 87.
3 months before the Winter Olympics.
Before the Winter Olympics. And Doris is trying to qualify for the Summer Olympics. Meanwhile, we also see Sanka in this pushcart derby. Where you have like a little kid on the front of the cart, and then you have an older member pushing it and driving it.
Think of it, for those of you who've never seen push carts, think of it as a 2-man boxcar derby.
But Sanka's, he kind of loses control. It goes off the track, crashes into a little, snack stand or something that's on the side of the track. And that's our first time we get the joke of like, Sanka, you dead?
Come on.
That's how we find out about the pushcart tradition, and that Sanka is generally considered one of the best pushcart drivers. Everybody is kind of there to see Sanka win. It does seem like he has a history.
He claims that he is the multiple-time champion.
Yeah. We find out that Doris's father was a gold medalist in the Olympics. He wants to follow in his father's footsteps. And so he gets down to the qualifying and he meets Yul Brynner and Junior, who are also there to do the qualifying. And as they go, Junior stumbles somehow and wipes out Doris and Yul.
So there goes Olympic dreams shattered. as tears were running down Derice's face as he sees someone else cross the finish line before him. This is his life's goal, is to go to the Olympics and be like his father, and it was just taken away from him by this guy that trips over his own feet. So he goes to the Olympic Committee himself, saying, hey, that what happened was garbage. You have to redo the race because my spot was taken away from me by a guy who tripped on his own feet.
And honestly, you feel for him because it's not his fault. He didn't get a fair shot.
No, he didn't. But the head of the Jamaican Olympic Committee is saying the race is done. We're not going to redo it. We have our track team try again in 4 years. And if he had lost the race, he probably would have let it go because, hey, the better man won. But he didn't lose fairly. It was taken from him. So And
the same thing with Yule.
Yeah.
I think if Yule had lost, same thing. But as he's in the office, he sees a photograph he's never seen before. It's his father standing next to another gold medal winner. And he says, hey, who's this? And he says, the head of the association says, that's Irv Blitzer. He is a Winter Olympic champion, a bobsledder. He was a friend of your father, and he moved to Jamaica specifically to talk your father into becoming an Olympic bobsledder because he thought a sprinter would make the best bobsledder. And Derice was like, well, okay, if you won't let me into the Summer Olympics, I'll become a bobsledder. What's a bobsled?
That's the joke because, hey, they're on an island and they don't know what snow is. Yeah, after this, Derice goes directly to Sanka, his best friend, saying, hey, you're the best pushcart guy I know. Bobsleds are kind of like pushcarts. Will you
Without
help
wheels.
me? Yeah.
And on ice.
And on ice. That's the thing that gives him ice. No. I'm from Jamaica. We don't have ice. Which, again, that becomes a running gag of Island Boy Sanka adjusting to winter.
You saw me when I moved to Chicago.
I wanted to mention that.
I feel for Sanka this entire film.
So, yeah, we've mentioned it. You're from Georgia. You're from the South. You moved to Chicago.
I'm not just from Georgia. I'm from, like, the south of Georgia.
You are hop, skip, and a jump away from Florida.
Yeah.
So when you moved to Chicago, I remember when you bought your first ever winter coat, how happy you were. Like, I'm warm.
Well, parts of me were slightly warmer. I don't think I was ever warm the entire time I was in Chicago until I got my space heaters and my humidifiers. I actually finally in one apartment I had central heating, 2 space heaters, and a humidifier. Someone gifted me a humidifier. And I ran the space heaters and the humidifiers, and at one point my roommate came in and they opened my door and a wall of steam hit them in the face. Like if you open the door of a sauna.
Yeah.
That happened, and they went, what is going on in here? And I was just inside my room just smiling, and I went, I'm comfortable again. So that was when I finally reached comfort levels in Chicago, because I could breathe. It was finally fine. They were like, it's a sauna in here, and I'm like, I know, it feels like home.
So you feel for Sanka as
yeah. This whole movie, I was like, yep, I've been there, Sanka. I understand what you're going through.
So he gets Sanka on board. And now they need a coach, so they go to Irv, who is now a bookie. But he's not a very good one, because we see his horse literally didn't come in. Lost the race he was listening to on the radio.
At which point he just destroys that radio.
With a pool cue.
Yeah.
And yeah, once Doris and Sanka saying, hey, we want to start a bobsledding team. Can you help us? Says, no, I want nothing to do with bobsleds. I hate bobsleds. Whoever heard of a Jamaican bobsled team? Get away from me, kid. You bother me. But they don't quit. It's a nice little montage of them constantly bothering him day after day after day.
And finally, he lets them talk long enough for Doris to say, I am Ben Bannock's son. You moved down here to get my father to join your bobsled team. And the thing that really gets him is he says, look, your father was a gold medalist. He was one of the best I've ever seen. And he could run his race in 10 flat. And Doris said, yeah, and I can run it in 9.9.
Well, you're faster than your old man. I'll give you a shot. So we again go to this. Well, there are only 2 people, though. They need a 4-man team. Now, this is the
thing that I don't quite understand about the movie, except for the fact that the first team was a 4-man team. Because there are 2-man bobsled teams.
That is what I was trying to.
Didn't just stop there.
That is what I'm trying to get to. Is that they did compete in the 2-man team. Now, this movie only focuses on the 4-man team, but 2 of the members of the 4-man bobsled team did compete in the 2-man event. And since then, Jamaica has sent a 2-man team to the Winter Olympics. So they could have, if they wanted to, go for a 2-man team. But they really are pushing the 4-man team in this film. So we get to this little, there's this like classroom, there's all these athletes there. And they show this film of bobsleds and they're crashing and all this stuff. It's like a movie that you would see in traffic school almost.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that I think they expected, Doris and Sanka, I think, expected that Irv was going to give like a big recruitment speech in the sense of, hey, don't you want to join the bobsled team? It's going to be the greatest adventure of your life or whatever. And it sort of starts out like that. Like, this is the greatest roller coaster you're ever going to be on. And then you're going to crash and die.
Well, he does say later in the movie that he's not good at inspiring speeches.
Yeah, and we see it here because it immediately becomes like a horror film.
Which is enough to scare every athlete out of that room. They are not crashing, and they're not crashing in snow. But,
yeah, I just kind of like the complete crickets emptiness of the room when they turn the lights back on.
But luckily for them, Yule and Junior are late to the presentation, and they just walk in. Hey, is this where the bobsled auditions are? Yule immediately jumps on to the team because he wants to get off the island. And he realizes that the only way to get off the island is to become an Olympian. And this is kind of his story throughout the rest of the movie. He wants to become famous. And the only way he knows how to get famous is through athletics. And that's his way off the island. He even berates, later in the movie, not only other people from the island, but his own teammates. Like, you're going to be on the island for the rest of your life, and I'm going to be living in a castle. Yeah. Kind of deal. So his thing is, I'm only joining this team to get off the island. The rest of you don't matter to me.
Yeah. And Junior also wants to be an Olympian, and he also kind of wants to make it up to Doris.
Oh yeah, so the minute Junior walks into that movie and into that room, Yule's going, You took this away from me.
Yeah, Yule wants to beat his skull in. But Doris is like, you know what? We need him. If you beat his head in, we will not have a team. So we've let him live, and maybe we will get to the Olympics. So by default of nobody else showing up, they got a 4-man team now.
Yep.
And Irv, the other thing we don't quite understand is how Irv cobbles together their first sort of pushcart bobsled.
It looks like it's a bathtub on wheels, and it probably is.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's on wheels, and they're practicing on dirt, just kind of going down slopes and hills on the island.
There is a minor thing here of Irv making Doris the driver, aka the captain of the team, where Sanka is like, well, I'm the driver. I'm the best driver on the island. I should be the driver of the bobsled. And the short version is Irv makes Doris the captain essentially because he's the only responsible one of the 4 of them.
And once Sanka hears the reasoning, he's right. You know, Sanka backs down at that point. He's like, you're right. I do not want the responsibility of everybody's safety in my hands.
Because, yeah, when you're the driver, the safety of your team is in your hands. And, yeah, he doesn't want that. So we also kind of get Junior's story. You see, Junior is rich. He lives in the biggest house on the island. His father is a wealthy businessman. And Junior's father is kind of done with Junior's fantasy dream of becoming an athlete. You know, it's time to get rid of this dream of being an athlete and get a real job. Go to the real world. And
his father is absolutely pleased he wiped out in that qualifier because, okay, now you'll give up and you'll go work for some acquisition firm or whatever he got him a job at.
Yeah, he got him a job at a firm in Miami. Twist Jr. does not want this. In fact, we see him talking to his dog saying, yeah, I'm going to tell my dad I'm going to be a bobsledder. I'm going to go to the Olympics. And then he just is unable to stand up to his father. So he doesn't tell his father at all. And we'll come back to that in a bit. Because we got a montage of them training how to ride a bobsled.
Yeah, one of the things we're not saying is that quite a bit of this film is montage.
A good number of it's montage. I mean, it's funny. You see them crash into a police car. There's a scene of Sanka in an ice cream truck, and because he needs to get used to the cold. But the next part of the story after their little training montage is that Irv goes to the head of the Jamaican Olympic Committee saying, we want you to sponsor the team so we can go to Canada and go and compete in the Winter Olympics. And the head of the committee says no. Is that we have basically he doesn't want his country to be embarrassed. You know, we're summer athletes, we're runners, we don't play in the snow, and I will not have my country embarrassed at the Olympics.
Also, he's only asking for $20,000 to send these people to the Olympics. Can you imagine sending an entire team to the Olympics for that little? That's just, I can't imagine that.
So since the Olympic Committee, the Jamaican Olympic Committee says no, they have to raise the money themselves. Sanka starts singing on the street to try to raise money. He gets $1 to shut up. They go to several banks to try to get a loan, and they get laughed at. Yule starts arm wrestling for dollars. He does start beating people, but he eventually loses to this very large woman. Comedy. Doris opens up a kissing booth.
But, they only raise a couple of $100, I think. Less than 200 maybe. But Junior walks in with like $20,000 and just dumps it on the table.
Yep. He sells his car. And we see him with a very expensive-looking car earlier in the film. He sells his car for the money, and that's the money they're going to take to Canada. And he says that he never told his father that he's going to the Olympics. He says he told his father that he's going to take the job in Miami, and that he loaned his car to a friend, which is why the car's not going to be there. So this will not bite him in the butt later in the film. No way. Nuh-uh. So anyway,
we make it to Canada. Yay, Canada.
Reality kind of hits as these 4 Jamaican boys who've never been off the island are witnessing winter for the very first time. And as we said, you kind of empathize with the 4 boys here.
I love when they say, "Hey, Sanko, what are you smoking?" Because there's just this white puff coming out of him, and he's like, "I'm not smoking, I'm breathing."
Adult jokes.
Yeah. I love how little they played off the Rasta angle.
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird that they have an entire Rasta character, and that's the only joke they make about it the entire time.
Because it's still a Disney movie.
Yeah, but it's not. There's not even like a get past the censors joke until that one.
If this was like a touch-tone movie, they probably would have leaned into it more. But because this is a straight Disney movie, they can't go full tilt into the ganja.
I mean, there's a Haile Selassie joke later, but it's literally just saying the name Haile Selassie. I kind of respect their restraint, actually. I mean, Rastafarian culture is much more nuanced than just weed, so, you know.
Irv decides to goes to register the team. He's first kind of laughed at by the register guys. Oh, you know, yeah, Jamaican bobsled team. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, you're in the system, Jamaican bobsled team. But it's when he sees some of the other officials from the Americans that things start to get cold. As one of them just walks right by him, giving him like the icy stare of death. One kind of shakes, "Hey, what happened to you, man?" Because we see earlier in the movie this very skinny picture that is obviously not John Candy. And then we see John Candy, even he makes it like, look how thin I was, and look how not thin I am now.
Yeah. And the whole been kind of a suggestion that something happened to make him hate bobsledding. But we've never been told what. And then once he gets on the ground, he keeps saying hello to people, and most of the people do not want to say hello back to him.
They want nothing to do with him.
And now that he's on the ground, a few people are even saying, like, "Oh, you've got some nerve."
Yeah, showing your face here again, yeah. We get one word earlier that he's disgraced, but we never told what he did. So all we know at this point in the movie, from what the movie is telling us, that he is a disgraced former Olympian. And everyone is kind of either avoiding him or just making the bare minimum in kind word in dialogue, and then moving on with their day. But Irv gets one of his old teammates, who's now one of the judges, saying, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Can you just give me half an hour of your time?" And he pretty much tells him, "We need a sled. I've got $5,000 left. I'll give it to you. Can you just give me a sled?" "Well, we can give you one of our old practice sleds, but that's the best I can do." Which is enough. They have a sled. Let's kind of move on to Reese's other kind of story here, as he begins to idolize the Swiss bobsled team. He sees them practice. He goes to the track. He goes, the bobsled track. He sees the Swiss team perform, how in sync they are, the rituals they do to warm up.
Their beautiful, gleaming red bobsled.
Yeah. And this starts his little thing for the rest of the film, how he idolizes them, and he wants his team to mimic what they're doing because they're the best. And he wants their team to at least sort of get there.
Yeah, they start counting in German. Or he starts counting in German to get the team to go and everything.
He even starts, banging their helmets the way the Swiss the Swiss team does to hype him up and all that. When they get to where the sleds are, when he sees the Swiss sled, he's just in awe of it, how beautiful it looks, and he just wants to get what it looks like, what's inside it, and just in awe of this of the Swiss. And then he sees the sled that Irv was able to buy, and it's just points that look like it's held together by duct tape. It's unpainted, all rough metal. Yeah.
The interesting thing is that once he realizes that this is the bobsled they're going to use, he says it's beautiful. He's so into the sport by this point that, you know, whatever gets him there, he's not going to complain.
Yeah.
If this is the sled he's going to use, this is the sled he's going to use, and it's going to be great.
So we get to the next day, and it's their first trial, and they're kind of stared at. As soon as they get there, everyone stops talking. They all stare at them, and people are starting to crack jokes at, oh, hey, Jamaican bobsled team, why don't you go back to the island and all that stuff. And this is, I understand why they did this for the movie, but according to everyone involved in the real life events that happened, they were pretty much welcomed by the other team. Even other teams were actually lending them equipment, knowing that they didn't have their own stuff. So this animosity, this joke, having the other athletes treat them as jokes, invented for the movie, but just having them come there and having all of the athletes welcome them with open arms and lend them equipment wouldn't be a very entertaining movie.
Yeah, there's no drama in that.
Yeah, you need drama. So, yeah, and so they're at the hotel afterwards, and it's more of the same story that we've said before of Yul wanting to get off the island, that he's going to become rich and famous by being an Olympian. And he pulls out this picture saying, this is where I'm going to live. I'm going to live in a castle just like this. And Sanka says, that's Buckingham Palace? That is where the Queen of England lives. You cannot live there unless you marry the Queen. And it's another dream shattered moment. And you see him crumpling up the picture. It's that his dream of living in a castle outside the island is just crushed right there.
Well, the thing is that just before that, Yul had been making fun of Sanka for reading a Hulk comic book.
Oh yeah, we get another Marvel reference in a Disney movie before they bought Marvel. I forgot about that.
Yeah, but Yul, as cute as that was, but Yul was saying that's a children's book. You know, you're just as ignorant as everybody else on the island, and that's why you're going nowhere. But I'm gonna live here. I'm gonna live in this place. And that's when Sanka and Junior, like, you're so ignorant you don't even know that's where the Queen of England lives. It does tell you something about Yul's method of going about things. And, you always run into these people who they want not to rag on the Muppets, but the Muppets made that joke of the standard rich and famous contract.
Yeah.
But there are people who honestly think that's how it works. And Yul seems to be one of those people. And you get it now with the kids who think like, well, I'm going to get on YouTube and that's how it's going to be.
I'm going to become TikTok famous.
Or I'm going to get on Twitch and that's going to,
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, but for Yul is, once he becomes an Olympian, once he becomes an Olympic champion, he doesn't need anything else. He's going to live the life of luxury.
Yeah, and even for an Olympian, that's not how it works. I mean, good grief. There are thousands of Olympians every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
There are hundreds of medal winners. there are 20 that make a living at being an Olympian.
And your age of athletics only goes so far. Once you reach a certain age, the body doesn't react the same way as it used to. Speaking as a 40-year-old man.
Well, yeah, but even the really good ones in their sport, there's only a few sports that you can really make that type of money at.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Yule has no backup plan. It's just Olympics or bust.
Yeah, Olympics or bust. And we see that Doris already has a backup plan. Doris is a teacher.
Yeah, we didn't. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment when he says he's about to train, and his girlfriend, wife. It's never really explained.
I think it's a girlfriend.
Yeah, he says you've got papers to grade. You don't have time to train. He says, the trials are tomorrow. I need to train as much as I can.
Yeah, so the one sensible one on the team,
That's why he's the captain.
That's why he's the captain. He's already working like most Olympians do, He's already got his career in order. But he has a dream of being an Olympian, and then he's going back to the rest of his life.
But in an amazing point in this movie, it's Junior that stands up for Yule. Say, well, at least he has a dream. And if he works for it, if he wants it bad enough, that dream will come true. And more people need to, he talks about his father, how his father came from nothing, started a business, and now he's the richest man in Jamaica. And that all you need is a dream and the passion for it. So he kind of is on Yule's side, but, trying to tell him that it can happen, but it ain't going to be easy.
I both like this moment and hate this moment. Because I like the character moment of Junior empathizing with Yule, standing up for Yule, being his friend. Good character moment. But this does read as that kind of hollow Disney speech coming from a rich boy who didn't really much have to work for anything.
Your typical Disney follow your dreams come true.
Yeah. Just wish on a star and everything will come true. And, at least he does put in there about you keep dreaming and working hard. Mm-hmm. It's a bit more of the Tiana dream, than it is just to hope for it and one day it's just going to show up on your doorstep. It does ring a little bit hollow considering who it is coming from.
Yeah, the rich boy.
Yeah. But I like that Yule does pick back up the picture and, okay.
It may not be that house, but, there's a chance he could have a nice house somewhere.
Yeah. You could have a nice house, and you could leave the island.
Yeah.
So,
and it does kind of start something between Junior and Yule that they are kind of together for the rest of the movie.
Is this where we go to the bar?
No. We go to the second trial. They lose control of the sled, and one of the Olympic officials telling the photographer, oh yeah, take the picture now. The most embarrassing picture you could take of this Jamaican team chasing their sled as they lose the grip on it as it goes down the track.
Yeah. And that picture makes it back to the island.
The Olympic official, his worry is coming true as Jamaica is becoming embarrassed by this bobsled team that don't know how to bobsled. But it also gets Junior's father, because Junior's father is reading the newspaper and sees his son in the paper running after a bobsled. So yeah, again, bit him in the butt there. So we move on to Doris. One of the Olympic officials we saw earlier kind of talks to him saying, "Hey, your coach isn't exactly what he seems. He's, you might want to talk to him about what he did to, he was a gold medal. He was a gold medalist, yes, but he had one of his medals taken away from him, and you might want to ask him why that happened." But at first, Doris doesn't care. It's like, he's disgraced. So what? He's learned his lesson. And but this does start a little bit of doubt in Doris, especially when it comes to Irv.
Well, no, they tell him exactly what happened, right?
Yes. That he put weights in the front of the sled to make it go faster. And that's how he got his last gold medal. But they found out he was cheating, and they stripped him of the gold medal. And then basically saying, is that the kind of guy you want as your coach? And I don't know how much of this Irv heard, because he kind of walks in as this is happening.
I think from what we hear later, I think we're supposed to figure out that he probably heard everything. But Doris doesn't tell the rest of the team, which I think is interesting.
But Junior gets a letter from his father saying, yeah, this is done, come home. Junior's still under the thumb of his father. So they go to a bar, Junior and Yul kind of bonding here. You're going to let your father tell you what to do and all that stuff.
But Junior kind of loses it there. He's got his mug of beer, and he's saying, I don't know what to do, and he's getting a little loud. And, of course, the East German, one of the favorite Cold War villains that we have.
It is the 80s at this point.
Huh?
It is the 80s at this point.
Yeah. But, one of the East Germans takes exception to him being loud in the bar and is like, hey, shut up, calls him a little boy or whatever.
He calls him a tourist. He doesn't exactly say the whole you don't belong here because you're black. It's, you're a tourist, go back home, you're not Olympian. Which is probably the closest we're going to get to something like that in a Disney movie. At least until later in this movie.
Well, they do at one point suggest that the sight of a whole bunch of black people trying to bobsled has ruffled some feathers.
But yeah,
that is very explicitly stated at one point in the movie, but just one point.
Yes.
They don't get too far into the racism of it. But again, like you said, according to the real people, that wasn't really their experience.
At least in front of them, anyway. Maybe it was behind the scenes, but
yeah,
as far as their personal experience, no one said to their face, "You don't belong here because you're black" or anything like that. They straight said, "Hey, welcome to the Olympics. We're gonna help you out." But again, we need drama in this movie.
Yeah.
So to calm down, Junior, Yul takes him into the men's room, saying, "Look at yourself. I see a man of pride. I see a man of power. You're a tough mother who won't take anything from anybody." Psyching him up, kind of repaying the favor from earlier at the hotel. You stood up for me. I'm going to stand up for you. And
it's a rather nice scene.
So Junior kind of gets this spark of courage from the hype up with Yul and goes into the face of the East German team. And the East Germans and the Jamaican team start a big fight in the bar.
And apparently the Jamaicans win, because when we see them right after the cutscene, when they're sitting in the hotel room giggling about it all, there is not a bruise on them. There is not a cut. They look perfect. So I can only assume that when the camera cut away, they wiped the floor with everyone in there. Because there is not a tear on their clothing. There is nothing. There is not a single follicle of hair out of place, especially on Yule. Man looks wonderful. No, but I mean, seriously, they look amazing, and that is supposed to be right after they left the bar. So I can only assume that they absolutely mopped the floor with that entire East German team.
Yeah, but Doris is not happy about this. It's like, like you don't see the Swiss team starting fights at bars. Why are you guys starting fights at bars? We're here to do business. We're not here to play around. So eventually, Irv comes back. He's settled with the bar that they're not going to press charges, but he's not happy with his team. It's like, well, they already hate me because I'm disgraced. They already hate you because you're different. They hate us collectively because of that. So we need to get our crap together if we're going to make this happen.
And so it's another montage.
Yep.
We told you this movie was mostly montage.
Let's move on to the third trial.
And this is the one that will decide it.
Yep, this is the final trial that will decide whether they qualify for the Olympics or not.
They've been told the whole time they're going to have 3 judges, and the third judge is actually a guy that Irv knows, and he says through the whole movie, I know him, good guy, fair guy. And they get there to find out that judge has been replaced by the guy that has been giving them crap the entire movie. So that's strike 1. And then they find out that their qualifying time has been changed yet again.
Yeah, when they first get to Canada, he's told that the trial would be you have to win in 1 minute and 5 seconds. And by the time he gets to register, he's been told it's been cut down to 1 minute and 2 seconds. By the time we get to this final trial, it's been cut down to 1 minute flat. They have to finish the trial in 1 minute or they will not qualify for the Olympics. It is also at this point that that Irv says, well, I got a present for you. I was going to wait for the Olympics, but if you're going to compete against the best, you got to look like you can hang with them, and gives them their uniforms, their Jamaican uniforms, which look really nice.
Yeah. It's spandex time.
I'm going to freeze in this.
Yeah. I feel you, Sanka.
So
they've got their nice bright yellow helmets, their nice black, green, and yellow spandex outfits. They're looking tight. And we get their tense little run down the track, and they finish just under a minute.
Yay! They actually qualify. This is also where they paint the after it is where they paint the sled. And it's a very nice paint job on the sled, all black with the yellow and the Jamaican flag. It's awesome.
And they decide that they need to give their sled a name. And Junior says, I think we should name it Tallulah. And they mock him horribly. They said, where'd you get a horrible name like that? And he says, well, it's my mother's name.
Good name.
Good name. But of course, it's Doris who names the sled.
Cool Runnings. Title!
Cool Runnings. It means peace be the journey.
So, as you're celebrating, Irv gets a letter in that they've been disqualified. That they will not be able, they are disqualified from competing in the Olympics. This gets Irv really peeved that he goes directly to the Olympics committee. Like, they're in a meeting, he busts right in saying, what the hell is going on here? I know you already have something against me because I cheated, but don't take it out on my team. You know, you want to ban me from the Olympics, ban me from the Olympics. You want to, you want to punish me, punish me. The reason that they say that they're disqualified is that they never went through any trials prior to going to the Olympics, and therefore they are disqualified. But Irv says, according to the rules, even a team that doesn't go through those kind of qualifiers still technically qualified by passing the trials, which the Jamaican team did. But this one judge who was a former who's actually Irv's former coach, which is why he hates him because he cheated, says, well, we changed the rules. You have to qualify in your home country first before you can be sent to the Olympics.
And the interesting thing is that they said it basically comes down to we're allowed to change the rules whenever we want.
And they also say, hey, we don't want a team that will not, if we have a bad team, it's going to embarrass the Olympics. And this is where it's John Candy. It's Irv saying, yeah, 4 black guys in a bobsled are really going to be embarrassing to you.
The whole movie, Irv keeps saying, I'm not really good at speeches.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the point where he proves himself wrong. Because this is a great speech. And bravo to the writer, because this is the best speech in the movie. It doesn't matter if they win a medal. It doesn't matter if they're actual contenders for first place or not. Mm-hmm. They could come in first, they could come in last. But they've worked hard to get there. And they deserve to walk into a stadium and represent their country. And that's all they've asked for.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. The Olympics this year have been really interesting. It's very early in the Olympics still as we record this. But several countries have just earned their first Olympics medals in the country's history. And for a lot of these countries, they have been competing for years and years and have never won a medal in any sport. But they have sent Olympians every Olympics. And the Olympians are there to represent their country, wave their flag, and be a part of the Olympics. And most of them know that they will probably statistically never see a podium. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say it, but a lot of it might come down to money or training or equipment or, Mm-hmm. But they get to go and they get to say, I was an Olympian. I represented my country. And I loved this speech, especially this year, mm-hmm. because it's been so interesting to see the emotion of some of these people that they get to say that they're the first person to ever bring home an Olympic medal of any kind for their country.
Yeah. And it might be the only one.
Yeah, it may be years before their country ever sees a medal again. But they'll keep sending people and they'll keep going. And, they'll keep being proud that they have an Olympic team. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So.
And this speech works because, the Jamaican team is back in. And we do go back to Jamaica, seeing all of the people of the community all rallying together at Mama Coffee's little restaurant to watch their team on TV. Those are my boys. Those are my boys.
And you see that these are the only 4 Jamaicans in the entire Olympics.
Yeah.
And Derice is carrying the flag.
Yep. And that was his dream. He wanted to make it to the Olympics. He couldn't make it one way. He made it the other.
And now we get to the dumbest part of the movie.
Junior's father shows up.
Okay, this is by far the dumbest part of the movie. And like we said, this is entirely fiction.
Yes.
So this is we're not ragging on anybody's real life story here.
These are fictional people.
This is fictional people. This is some writer sat down and wrote this because they thought it was a good idea. And I am sorry to the writer. One of y'all messed up, okay? Because this is the dumbest plot point I think I have ever seen in a movie. Your son has a silly pie-in-the-sky dream of becoming an Olympian. You want him to settle down with the sensible dream of doing accounting or whatever it is you want him to go do at that firm in Miami. So you tell him to come home and give up on this ridiculous dream of becoming an Olympian. He doesn't do that. You show up after the Olympic opening ceremony to retrieve your son, who is now an Olympian, to tell him to give up on his ridiculous dream of becoming an Olympian. You do this while standing in the Olympic Village, which houses Olympians. To tell your son, an Olympian, to give up on his ridiculous dream of one day becoming an Olympian. Does anyone see a problem with this storyline?
And he calls his son a stupid little boy with a foolish dream, even though he's accomplished his dream.
He's an Olympian! You're at the Olympics! The Olympics has started! Your son is an Olympian, my dude.
But I think they needed that moment. Junior stands up to his father saying, I'm not going anywhere. I am an Olympian, and I will compete in the Olympics.
This scene would make sense
if it was earlier in the film.
At any other point in the movie, except literally after the Olympic opening ceremonies have been held at the Olympics. Yeah. Literally any other point in this movie, this scene makes sense, except where it is placed in this movie.
I don't know.
I mean, this baffles me.
Let's move on.
I'm sorry, it just
no, it's fine, it's fine. But let's move on to the actual
it's the Olympics now.
Yeah, it's the actual Olympics. They've made it. And it's their first race in the Olympics.
Boy, that Dries, he really likes them Swiss, don't he?
Yep, he starts doing everything that the Swiss are doing. He's knocking them on their heads. He's trying to hype them up the way the Swiss are hyping them up. Yeah, look how good the Swiss are. We got to do what the Swiss do. And there's a nice little line from Senka. Yeah, they got those fancy pocket knives too, but you don't see us having any of them.
Yeah.
But they go on their first race. And a little bit of nerves kick in as they have a little bit of trouble getting into the sled. And we cut to footage. I don't know if this is actual Olympic footage or not.
I don't either, honestly.
But it's them having trouble getting into the sled as it's going down. And they hit the corners really rough. They're kind of getting their heads knocked in. And they finish. Their time is last place, which kind of starts getting the people back home kind of, oh, wow, all of that, and they finished last.
Which and the commentators are having a field day. They're kind of like, well, what did you expect from Jamaica?
How embarrassing. Everyone back home must be embarrassed for them. And they come up back to the room, and there's this moment here where Dries is saying, we're not home anymore. We're here. We need to act like the people act here. And acting like that kind of screwed them up, as we have this moment here with Senka saying, I don't care what they're doing. I'm from Jamaica, and I'm going to do this as a Jamaican. And if you and you know, it's this moment is that we can copy everybody else and lose, or we can act like ourselves. Even if we still lose, we're still ourselves, which is a nice moment there. You know, you want to count in Swiss when we're going downhill and that screwed us up. You want to act like the Swiss are acting, and that's screwing us up. Let's act like us. Let's do it. We're here to represent Jamaica. Let's act Jamaican. And that kind of works. That that gets into Doris. Like, don't act like them, act like us. It's a definitely a nice be yourself kind of moment.
One of the cool things about this scene is while they're talking, Doris is wearing an all red Adidas like tracksuit that looks very much like the Swiss were wearing earlier in the movie. Mm-hmm. Whereas Sanka is wearing like the kind of yellows and greens and stuff of Jamaica. Mm-hmm. But Doris looks very much like the Swiss team. The way he's standing, the kind of, you know, ramrod straight stance and the, you know, all that kind of stuff. And Sanka's very loose and, you know, it's the way this is filmed, I really love it.
Yeah. So we get to the next day and all of them are on the same board. Greetings from Jamaica. They're riding on a pickup truck and they're singing the Jamaican bobsled song that Sanka was singing earlier in the movie. Jamaica, we are a bobsled team.
Yeah, and they give Irv a Rasta hat, a knitted Rasta hat, in the Jamaican colors.
Yeah.
I love it.
They are united, kind of a deal.
Yeah, and they get up and they do a different start. Instead of counting out even at all, they kind of do a nice little rhyme.
Again, invented for the film, but it's very nice.
And they absolutely nail it. They're completely in unison. Their time is spectacular.
They go from last place to 8th place in this one race.
Yeah, not a medal contender necessarily, but, you know, they're proving themselves a legitimate bobsled team.
Yeah.
Not a joke.
So we go to the next night, and there's this nice heart-to-heart song. That night, the other 3 members of the team are going out to a restaurant, and Doris is not going to go. He's going to stay home. He's going to stay in the hotel room. He's going to study the track, try to figure out what he can do, what kind of moves he needs to do to speed up their time. Because, as we mentioned earlier, he's the responsible one. That's why he's the captain. So he's not going to go drinking at the bar. But he has this moment with Irv. And he asks Irv, why'd you cheat? You were already an Olympic gold medalist. Why did you need to cheat to win another? And Irv says, I'm a winner. That was my whole life, was winning. I won everything I was ever in. And when you make your life being a winner, you have to keep on winning, no matter what. So he cheated because he had to win, because that was his whole thing. He had to win. And Doris doesn't really understand this. He's like, you know, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. And it's probably the best line in this whole movie. If you don't think you're enough without a gold medal, you'll never be enough with it. And I love that line. Like, you can be, you know, if you have to be the best to be good, even when you're the best, you're still not that good. You know, like winning isn't the only thing kind of lesson.
Yeah.
And the way John Candy delivers that line, yes, he's a comedian, But he could have been a great dramatic actor if they gave him the chance.
The really great comedians understand drama better than the great dramatists, I think.
And it was so sad that we lost him not long after this, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's the next day. And this is the third trial, the third race, and it's the final race. This is it. This is the final run for the Jamaican team. If they finish high enough, they're a medalist. And the commentators in the movie say that they have a chance to become a medalist. In real life, not so much, but it's a movie. We're going to go with it.
And in the movie, Jamaican bobsled fever has gripped the entire crowd. People are wearing T-shirts that say Jamaican bobsled team.
The commentators are wearing it, yeah.
And in Jamaica, the Mama Coffee's bar is just filled with people, including the head of the Jamaican Olympic Committee.
Mm-hmm. Everyone is here to see this happen, and everyone's on their side. So they start the race, and it looks like things are going good. But then we get, did we mention that this was an old practice sled? So, yeah, this old practice sled is starting to come apart as they are going a little too fast down these turns. And it's getting to the point where bolts are starting to fly off, and this sled completely breaks apart as how fast they're going. And they can't slow it down enough. And they go into one turn, the bolts pop, and they are just scraping the wall with their heads.
That part actually did happen. One of the racers said that he started to smell what smelled like smoke during the crash, which he thought was weird because bobsleds have no, like engine or anything to catch fire necessarily. And he realized that it was the fiberglass of his helmet was scraping the wall and basically burning. So that actually did happen during the crash.
And we see the footage from the Olympics of this happening.
Yeah.
It's very scary, especially the way it's filmed, because we see Doris's head completely bent over the top of this track. The way they filmed the way that part is framed, it's, if you didn't know it was a movie, it was kind of scary.
Yeah, so anyway, and some of it is not a movie. Some of it is the actual footage.
Yeah. So they're done. The sled's tipped over. They're loopy. They're out of it. But Doris gets up and he says, "We have to finish the race."
Yeah. Like, well, not before we hear Sanka say, "Doris, you dead?" And
no,
Doris says, "No, man, not dead.
Not dead. We have to finish the race." And
we do see the medics running down the track, though. I mean, it is a terrifying moment because in the film, and also if you don't know the story of the actual race, you don't know if they're injured, if anybody actually did lose their life. It is a very tense moment when you watch the film for the first time, because there's not really much sound, and you don't hear anything from the other two in the sled, except for Sanka and Doris at first. And then you see them start to move. And and then he says that they've got to finish the race. And you see the medics part, and the four of them emerge carrying the sled on their shoulders. Helmets off, heads held high.
They're going to finish the race. Which, again, as we mentioned, not how it happened in real life. They did get up. They did push their sled for the remainder of the course across the finish line. But they were in no condition to be lifting that sled.
Yeah, there were some injuries. I think one of them may have had a separated shoulder.
At least one of them would have had a concussion.
Yeah, there were some injuries. They did not escape unscathed, but they were capable of walking to the finish line, and they were capable of pushing the sled. In the movie, they walk proudly with the sled on their shoulders and smiles on their faces, and the entire crowd begins to clap and cheer, including the Olympic official who gave them so much crap, and Junior's dad, who is there with a giant Jamaican bobsled team shirt on.
And they crossed the finish line. Yes, they did not win. They didn't get the medal. But they still finished. That was, they didn't really expect to ever win a medal. They just wanted to finish, and they finished.
And they earned the respect. They wanted to prove that Jamaica having a bobsled team was not a joke.
Mm-hmm. And the other teams are congratulating them for finishing the race, saying, "We'll see you in 4 years." And he said, "Yeah, you will."
They get their picture taken, the four of them and their coach, smiling, big. It goes up on the wall of the Olympic office in Jamaica above the picture of Doris's father. We get the nice little epilogue saying the team came home as heroes, and in the 92 Olympics, they came back as equals.
Yep. And we get a very nice cover of I Can See Clearly Now.
Which, if you remember 1993, 1994, that jam was everywhere. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. Yeah, that is still, as the kids would say, a bop. Are the kids still calling them a bop? I don't know.
It's still on my playlist. It's been in my playlist for years.
Yeah, it's a great cover, yeah.
Yeah. And that is Cool Runnings, the story of the first Jamaican Olympic bobsled team.
It's a story of a Olympic Jamaican bobsled. This is a variant story. Let's just call it that.
The TBA getting involved again.
Yeah.
But, okay, honestly, again, as a factual retelling of history, no. This is not a factual retelling of history at all. As a inspirational sports
we are not judging this as a factual retelling.
No.
Let's get that out of the way.
But as a film, it's good. It's still good. This movie holds up surprisingly well.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Magic?
I'm gonna say yes. Cool Running still has the magic.
Yeah, it's been years since I've seen this one, and I'm gonna say magic. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
It's fun. The jokes work.
Oh, yeah.
There was nothing for me to dislike except for that one really bizarre plot point about the dad.
Yeah.
That is a really bad writing choice. Put that scene 3 minutes earlier, it makes sense. But where it's placed in the film, super bizarre.
Agreed. But yeah, if you're in the mood to watch some Olympic themed movies, yeah, definitely put it on. Even if it is about the Winter Olympics and not the Summer Olympics.
But about half of the movie takes place in a very summery feel. So bizarrely, it is a 90s movie where the jokes work, and it's also a 90s movie that the jokes aren't cringy.
Yeah. Like
we didn't have to go like, ooh, that was a problematic joke.
Mm-hmm. So, did you know that this movie inspired a musical? So, they made, not Disney, but apparently there is a musical based off the real Jamaican bobsled team called Rasta in the Snow, which features a lot of the songs that were featured in the film because they're all licensed songs, including I Can See Clearly Now. I had not heard about it until doing the research for this film. But if anyone has anything about this Rasta in the Snow musical, drop us a line. I'm very curious about this.
Yeah, I would be very interesting to see that as well.
Anyways, I think that's all we can say about Cool Runnings. Definitely, it still holds up. It's still great. Go watch it if you haven't seen it in a while. But let's move on to next week. Let's talk about another period piece, another movie that does actually take place in the summer and is about a summer pastime, baseball. And it's a movie that fairly recently got added to Disney Plus, The Sandlot. You're killing me, Smalls. Haven't seen this one in a long time, and I'm looking forward to going back to this one.
Yeah, I saw it when it came out, and I'm not sure I've seen it since.
So yeah, come back and we'll talk about another sports movie. Why, I don't know, but we're going to do it anyway.
Because you're torturing me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed this week, so.
So yeah, let's come back for The Sandlot next week, and we will talk to you all then. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic.
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic.
And of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.